Welcome back to my channel, my people. This one is a very sad situation. The video you guys are about to watch now is the moment Simon EKPA, the Prime Minister of Biafra, secured a court victory yesterday in Finland, and everything that really transpired in court yesterday. I want you guys to watch this video to the end so that you guys understand the situation of this case and how this case is going. And now the federal government in tears as Finland government set to release Simon EKPA following the court victories, and according to Finland government, they said Nigeria did not have any jurisdiction to ask them to repatriate Simon EKPA, and also many countries like Russia and Burkina Faso, they are now supporting Simon EKPA and also ask Finland government not to repatriate anybody to Nigeria, that Nigerian government is not following the situation on ground. Let me not talk too much. Let me allow you guys to watch everything that transpired in court in Finland yesterday. And if this is the first time watching my video, please do me a favor to subscribe so that anytime I bring this type of update, you'll be the first person to watch. Thank you guys and enjoy the rest of the video.
What happened today in the courtroom, today being the 13th of June of 2025, because a lot of interesting events unfolded. A lot of witnesses came before the court to present tangible statements and tangible documents against Simon. Today's court session was very intense. It was very emotional and tense. Well, let's stop the yapping and get into the video in essence. Well, just so you know, some witnesses from Enugu State, Nigeria appeared before the court today to give a submission of their testimonies. So the question here is, who are these individuals from Enugu State and what did they have to say about Simon? Well, before we show you the testimonies coming from individuals from from Enugu State, Nigeria, we have to show you some reference, because these individuals and the prosecuting lawyer used a particular statement made by Simon in 2023 in the court session today. So for you to understand, fully understand what happened today, I have to show you some quick documents and some quick publications. I'll give you an insight of today's discussion. Yes, back in 2023, the 2nd of February of that particular year, individuals and members of the Yale Media House, one of the biggest news agencies in Finland, traveled to Enugu State, Nigeria to cover some events. Showing right now on your screen is a reportage released by Yale, where it states, Yale in Nigeria, millions stay at home every Monday when Mr. Simon from Lati gives orders. Fear is palpable in the region. It also continued by saying, Simon from Lati has managed to get tens of millions of Nigerians to stay away from work and school every Monday. Now, Simon wants to prevent them from voting in the next elections. And this, like I said, is a publication or article coming from Yale, when this news agency sent some of its staffs to Enugu State, Nigeria to cover the event firsthand. So when Yale arrived in Enugu State, Nigeria, they noticed that every single Monday, the Southeasterners obey the so-called sit at home. Showing right now on your screen is a video coverage coming from Yale itself. As you can see, the streets are deserted, shops are closed, individuals, families remain indoors, and this, like I said, is a video coming from Yale. So this media outlet also interviewed a family in Enugu State, Nigeria, that will believe are the witness in court today. Yes, Yale interviewed a family in Enugu State, Nigeria, that will believe are the witness present in court today, being the 13th of May of 2025. Showing right now on your screen are the images of these individuals. I'm going to blur out their faces to keep their privacies hidden. This family told Yale that they lost their mom due to the fact that she did not obey the sit-at-home in the southeastern region of Nigeria, meaning that if you disobey the sit-at-home, you will definitely or probably lose your life. And this was an interview held in Enugu State, Nigeria. And we believe that these are the individuals who traveled from Enugu State to Finland to render their testimony. Remember that the Enugu State government had promised the government of Finland that they will furnish them with facts, evidence, and info that will be used against Simon in the courts of law. So we believe that these guys are the first batch of witnesses that has been sent by the Enugu State government. So let's go back to the courtroom and see what followed suit afterwards. The prosecuting lawyer in the courtroom started the court session by saying, Your Honor, we stand before you today to request the court's assistance in securing the testimony of a crucial witness residing in Enugu State, Nigeria. This witness possesses first-hand knowledge of the defendant Simon's actions leading up to and including the incitement of violence. While Simon perpetrated this act from abroad, the impact was acutely felt within the community where our witness lives and has direct evidence of the devastating consequences. In summary, The prosecuting lawyer is asking the permission of the presiding judge to grant him the green light to present his very first witness. An individual, like I said, is coming from Enugu State, Nigeria. So the presiding judge gave the prosecuting lawyer the green light to bring up his very first witness to make statements in the courtroom. The witness went straight to the stand and was sworn in as a testifier. This witness started by saying, "Honorable Judge, members of the jury, I stand before you today to share my first-hand experience of the disruption and chaos caused by Simon. His actions have had devastating impact on the lives of countless Nigerians." At this point, the witness made a reference to a statement issued by Simon in 2023. For better clarity, let me show you the statements made by Simon so we can all understand what the witness is referencing to. Showing right now on your screen is the article this witness is about to quote in the courtroom. This is an article released by Yale sometime back in 2023, where it states, Yale in Nigeria, millions stay at home every Monday when Simon from Lati gives orders. Fear is palpable in the region. This is the sentence this individual is about to quote. Hope this is actually very, very clear to understand. So let's go back to the courtroom and see what followed suit. So back in the courtroom, the witness quoted article I just showed you. And the witness was like, the statement, Simon from Lati has managed to get tens of millions of Nigerians to stay away from work and school every Monday. Simon also prevented us from voting in the large general elections in the country. That statement is accurately perfect and reflects the reality of the situation at hand and on ground. This witness continued by saying, the claim that Simon influenced tens of millions to abstain from work and school each Monday is not an exaggeration. I personally witnessed the widespread closures of businesses and educational institutions every Monday. The atmosphere was one of fear and uncertainty as people heeded his calls to boycott normal activities. This resulted in significant economic losses, disrupted education, and caused considerable hardship for families. Furthermore, his interference in the last general elections was blatant and undeniable. The call to boycott voting was widely circulated, and many people, including myself, were intimidated into staying away from the polls. This undermined the democratic process and prevented many Nigerians from exercising their fundamental rights to vote. The resulting election was undoubtedly affected by this large-scale voter suppression. The impact of this action reverberates through our society to this day. I believe that Simon's actions constitute a serious threat to the stability and well-being of Nigeria. His deliberate attempts to disrupt our daily lives and undermine our democratic processes cannot be tolerated. I urge the court to consider the gravity of his actions and hold him accountable for the harm he has caused. And this, like I said, is a statement coming from a witness from Enugu State, Nigeria, who firsthand observed the Monday sit at home. So this individual is making claims that Simon made the orders for individuals to obey the Monday sit at home, that Simon is the leader of the IPOB, that Simon is the reason why insecurity in the southeastern region of Nigeria has persisted up until this day and time. Yes, and these are the statements coming from the very first witness. When this very first witness was done making their speech in the courtroom session, the prosecuting lawyer stood up and said, "Your Honor, we are here to show you that Simon said himself in an interview he admitted he leads the IPOB, wanting the Biafran independence. He also confessed to ordering the weekly sit-at-home actions, like curfews on social media, for over a year. This disrupted life for millions in 5 states. Simon claims over 20 million people followed him willingly, but to prove this wasn't always true. His words caused problems. He is responsible. Your Honor, we are focusing on what Simon said. He admitted he leads the IPOB, which wants Biafra to be independent. He also said he ordered sit-at-home actions every week on social media. This was like a curfew affecting millions in 5 states. Simon said many people followed him willingly, but we will show you this wasn't always the case. His words caused problems. Your Honor, this case is about Simon's own words." The prosecuting lawyer also went a step further to ask the judge to grant him the permission to question or ask questions to his witness. The presiding judge gave him his permission, and the witness was ready to answer questions coming from his own lawyer, the prosecuting lawyer. The prosecuting lawyer asked, "Please state your full name for the record," and the witness gave his or her name. "And where do you live?" The witness responded by saying, "I live in Enugu State, Nigeria." The prosecuting lawyer asked, "Are you familiar with the defendant, Mr. Simon?" The witness said, "Yes, I am." The prosecuting lawyer asked, "How did you become familiar with Simon?" The witness responded by saying, "Through social media. I saw his posts and videos." The prosecuting lawyer responded or asked, "Did you ever hear Mr. Simon discuss the IPOB?" The witness said yes. The prosecuting lawyer asked, "What did you understand the IPOB to be based on what Mr. Simon said?" The witness responded by saying, "I understand it was an organization wanting Biafra to be independent." The prosecuting lawyer asked, "Did Mr. Simon ever claim to be a leader of the IPOB?" The witness said, "Yes, he did." Prosecuting lawyer asked, "How did Mr. Simon communicate with you and other people in your community?" Witness responded by saying, "Mostly through social media like Facebook and X." The lawyer said, "Did Mr. Simon issue any instructions or orders through these platforms?" The witness responded by saying, "Yes, he did." The lawyer asked, "What kind of instructions?" Witness responded, "He told people to sit at home every Monday." The lawyer said, what did sit at home mean in practice? The witness responded, it meant staying home from work, school, and businesses. Everything was closed. The prosecuting lawyer asked, did you and others in your community follow these sit-at-home orders? The witness responded by saying, yes, many of us did. The prosecuting lawyer said, why did you follow these orders? And the witness said, because of fear of violence, believing because social pressure and all of those stuff. If you don't listen to his orders, he has men stationed on ground that can come and hurt you and probably unalive you. And the prosecutor responded by saying, based on your experience, were these sit-at-home orders disruptive to your community? Witness said, yes, very, very disruptive. The prosecutor continued by saying, can you give some examples of how they were disruptive? The witness said, yes, this sit-at-home order has caused people to lose their lives. He has caused people to lose their source of income. He has made school children stay in school every Monday and lose time for education. He has shut down healthcare services and made it difficult to access emergency healthcare when the sit-at-home order is being given by this man. The prosecutor said, did these sit-at-home orders have any impact on the last elections? The witness said, yes, they did. Can you explain? The witness gave full disclosure of how Simon prohibited any Southeasterner from partaking in the elections. The prosecutor followed by saying, based on your observations, did Mr. Simon's actions cause hardship and suffering in your community? The witness said, yes, they did. The prosecutor said, thank you. That is all for now. At this point in time, when the prosecuting lawyer was done asking questions to his witness, Simon asked the presiding judge to please grant him the permission to speak, to defend himself at this particular point in time, because a lot of things has been said about him that he needs to address. The presiding judge gave him the green light to speak, and Simon said, Your Honor, members of the jury, I stand before you today to categorically deny the accusations leveled against me. The prosecution has presented an interpretation of my words and actions that is fundamentally flawed and misleading. Let's address each point individually. Firstly, the claim that I am the head of the IPOB organization is false. While I'm a supporter of the Biafran independence and have voiced my opinions publicly, I've never held any formal leadership position within the IPOB. My involvement has been solely as an advocate expressing my beliefs through speeches and social media, as is my right under freedom of speech. Secondly, the assertion that I issued weekly sit-at-home orders is a gross misrepresentation of my actions. I have never directly ordered anyone to stay home from work or school. My statements on social media have been expressions of support for the USB course, and any actions taken by others were their own independent decisions, not the result of direct orders from me. To suggest otherwise is to disregard individual agency and responsibility. Thirdly, the claim that millions followed my orders of their own free will is a manipulative framing of complex events. Where there has been significant support of the USB movement or the Biafran independence in southeastern Nigeria, to claim that millions acted solely based on my pronouncements ignores the multitude of factors that influence people's decisions, including their personal beliefs, cultural context, and economic realities. To attribute such widespread actions to my singular influence is a vast oversimplification and ignores the denounced reality on ground. In conclusion, the prosecution's attempt to portray me as the sole orchestrator of widespread disruption is a mischaracterization of the situation. My actions have been those of an advocate, expressing my beliefs within the bounds of freedom. The actions of others are their own responsibility, and I reject the prosecution's attempt to shift blame and accountability onto me. And this, like I said, is a statement, a full, detailed statement coming from Mr. Simon himself and not from his lawyer. Well, when Simon was done with this whole speech he rendered in court session, the prosecuting lawyer stood up to counter every single thing Simon has said. The prosecuting lawyer said, Your Honor, members of the jury, we have just heard the defendant's denial. He claims his words were misinterpreted and he's not a leader and that his actions were simply advocacy. But let's examine the facts. The defendant admits to speaking, to using social media. He admits to expressing support for the Biafran independence. But the question isn't what he said, but how his words were used. The defendant claims he wasn't a leader, yet his words were followed. His pronouncements were acted upon. His influence is undeniable. He claims he didn't order anyone, but his weekly post, his calls for action, had a clear and consistent effect disruption. He claims people acted of their own free will, but the evidence will show a pattern of fear, intimidation, and economic hardship. Was it truly free will when the alternative was potential violence or hardship? The defendant attempts to distance himself from the consequences of his words, but the law holds us accountable for the foreseeable consequences of our actions. His words, as he admitted to speaking them, caused disruption, fear, and hardship. We will demonstrate that he knew or should have known the impact his words would have. The evidence will speak for itself. Your Honor, members of the jury, you have heard the defendant's defense denies responsibility, claiming his words were misunderstood. However, the evidence will show a different story. He admits to using social media to express his views. He admits to discussing the IPOB and the goal of the Biafran independence. The issue isn't the right to speak, but the impact of his speech. The issue is the sit-at-home orders, the disruption, and the fear that was followed. He claims he's not a leader, but his words were followed. Businesses closed, schools shut down, daily lives were disrupted. He claims the people acted of their own free will, but the evidence will show that free will was often influenced by fear, social pressure, and threat of violence. The defendant attempts to distance himself from the consequences, but his words, spoken repeatedly, caused harm. The law holds him accountable for the foreseeable impact of his actions. We will present the facts, Your Honor. Members of the jury, the defendant has spoken. He denies the responsibility, but let's not be misled. He admits to speaking. He admits to using social media. He admits to promoting the Biafran independence. And these are the words coming from the prosecuting lawyer, where he pointed out some statements issued by Simon, and he was using his words, Simon's own words, against him at this particular point in time. Yes, after the prosecuting lawyer made that speech, he asked the judge to grant any permission to cross-examine Simon himself. And this will be the second time that the prosecuting lawyer would cross-examine Simon. So let's see the conversation had between the prosecuting lawyer and Simon. This is going to be a very, very interesting one. The prosecutor lawyer started by saying, Mr. Simon, let's get straight to the point. You gave an interview with Yale, correct? Simon said, yes, I did. In that interview, you stated, and I quote, I'm the head of the IPOB organization. Is that correct? Simon said, yes, but the presiding judge interrupted him and said, no, but, Mr. Simon, you claim leadership of the IPOB. You are aware that this organization promotes the independence of the Biafra, correct? Simon said, yes, I support the Biafran independence, but the lawyer cut him off and said, but nothing. You have positioned yourself as a leader. Now let's talk about the consequences of your leadership. For over a year and a half, you have been sharing weekly sit-at-home orders on social media. Would you agree that this effectively functioned as curfews? Simon said, I shared information and encouraged people to show solidarity. The prosecuting lawyer said, you raise awareness? Mr. Simon, your words had a clear and consistent effect. They caused chaos. You admit to sharing these orders, yet you deny responsibility for the consequences. How do you reconcile that? Simon said, I did not force anyone to comply. People acted on their own. Prosecuting lawyer said, acted on their own? You claim that most of the 20 million people in southeastern Nigeria followed your orders of their own free will. Do you truly believe that, given the climate of fear and intimidation surrounding your directives? Simon said, it was a movement. People wanted to support Biafra. The prosecuting lawyer said, a movement fueled by fear. You know that many people felt they had no choice but to comply with your orders. Explain to the jury why businesses were shuffled, schools were closed, and daily lives were disrupted. Was that truly voluntary? Simon responded by saying, I cannot control how people react to my words. The lawyer said, you cannot control, but you certainly influence. Your words were called to action, and you knew they would be followed. You have responsibility for the impact of your speech. You cannot hide behind the guise of advocacy when your actions led to real harm. Simon said, I was advocating for a cause I believe in. The lawyer responded by saying, a cause that you have turned into a weapon of fear. You admit to using social media to promote your views, but the issue isn't your right to speak. It's the impact of your speech. You have created an atmosphere of terror, and you sit here claiming it was voluntary. Simon said, I did not intend for any to be harmed. The lawyer responded by saying, but harm was done. You have created a situation where people were afraid to defy you. You have effectively silenced dissent through intimidation. Do you deny that people were afraid not to follow your orders? Simon responded by saying, that's not true. People supported the cause. The lawyer responded by saying, supported the cause? Or were they coerced by the fear of violence? You have a responsibility to acknowledge the consequences of your actions. You cannot simply wash your hands of chaos you have caused. Simon responded by saying, not responsible for the actions of others. The lawyer said, you are responsible for your words. Your words were a call to action, a call that you, as a self-proclaimed head of the IPOB, knew would be followed. You cannot escape accountability. Isn't that right? Simon said, I believe in the cause, but I cannot control how people respond. The lawyer followed up by saying, let's talk about the impact of your so-called recommendations. You claim that they were merely suggestions, yet you know they resulted in empty streets and closed businesses. How do you justify that? Simon answered by saying, I wanted to show solidarity for our cause. The lawyer said, solidarity or control? You have used your platform to manipulate the situation to your advantage. You have created a narrative that allows you to evade responsibility while others suffer the consequences of your actions. Do you not see the contradiction in your statement? Simon said, I was trying to raise awareness for Biafra. The lawyer responded by saying, awareness or chaos? You have disrupted lives and you sit here trying to point yourself as a matter for a cause. The evidence will show that your actions led to fear, hardship, and suffering. You cannot deny the reality of the situation. Simon bravely responded by saying, I stand by my beliefs. The lawyer continued by saying, and those beliefs have led to real-world consequences. You will be held accountable for the impact of your words. Mr. Simon, the jury will see through your attempts to distance from the chaos you have created. Thank you. At this point in time, the prosecuting lawyer was done cross-examining or asking questions to Simon, the defendant. At this point in time, Simon's lawyer had to jump in and calm the whole situation. He had to come in and calm or give a proper response to the whole court session. Simon's lawyer stood up and made a speech address to the presiding judge. He said, my client, Simon, stands before you today wrongly accused. I will now present a defense that will show you the truth. Members of the jury, the prosecution has painted a picture of my client as a puppet master, pulling the strings of chaos and disruption in southeastern Nigeria. I've presented a narrative that is simplistic, misleading, and frankly dishonest. They would have you believe that my clients, through social media posts, single-handedly orchestrated a year and a half of sit-at-home orders, crippling the economy, and instilling fear in the hearts of millions. This is a gross oversimplification of a complex socio-political situation. The prosecution selectively highlights statements made by my client in an interview with Yale, taking them out of context to support their narrative. They conveniently ignore the broader context of the Biafran independence movement, a movement with a long and complex history, fueled by deeply held beliefs and grievances that predict my client's involvement by decades. To suggest that my client alone is responsible for this movement is not only inaccurate but insulting to the millions who share those beliefs. The prosecution claims my client issued orders. I submit to you that the evidence will show these were expressions of support, calls for solidarity, not directives. The actions taken by individuals in response to this post were their own independent decisions, born out of their own convictions and beliefs. To conflict expression of opinion with direct orders is a dangerous distortion of free speech and individual agency. Furthermore, the prosecution's assertion that millions participated of their own free will is a cynical attempt to dismiss the very real social-political pressures at play. Economic hardship, historical grievances, and a deep-seated desire for self-determination are factors that cannot be ignored. To suggest that these were simply overridden by my client's social media posts is to ignore the reality of the situation. The prosecution has attempted to establish a direct causal link between my client's words and the actions of others. This is a flawed and illogical argument. Correlation does not equal causation. The situation in southeastern Nigeria is complex, involving multiple actors and influences. To pin the blame solely on my client is not only unfair, but unfundamental. In conclusion, the prosecution's case rests on foundation of selective evidence and flawed logic. They have presented a narrative that is both simplistic and misleading. My client is not a puppet master. He is an advocate expressing his beliefs within the bounds of free speech. He should not be held responsible for the actions of others. We urge you, members of the jury, to carefully consider the evidence, to reject the prosecution's distorted and ultimately unjust portrayal of my client. And this, like I said, is a speech or a statement coming from Simon's own lawyer addressed to the presiding judge, to the court session. Yes. To summarize the whole event, a second witness was called upon to give his own side of the story, and this time around, a witness, a businessman from Enugu State, Nigeria, was also called upon to serve as a witness. Unfortunately, we cannot give his full account in this video, because if we do, this video is going to be 1 hour long, and we don't want it to exceed the time frame we have in creating videos every single day. So by tomorrow, by 8 p.m. tomorrow, we'll continue the whole court session of today by giving the full account of this businessman who came in to give a testimony in the courtroom. Yes, anyways, if you find our videos interesting, please do well to subscribe and turn on post notifications, just in case you missed the full details from the court session on the 11th of June of 2025, where 3 individuals from the IPOB stormed the court session to testify against Simon. Just in case you missed that video, we have a video showing right now on your screen that will give you a full summary and breakdown of every single thing that has happened yesterday. If you want to watch that video and get full updates, click on this video showing right now on your screen to watch and understand. Click on this particular video, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks.